Let me interrupt your day for a moment. Not with motivation or encouragement, just with a little quiet observation. You are not afraid of failing. You are just afraid of losing the version of yourself that you have learned how to survive as. And that feels like safety to you. You call it being responsible, being realistic, being careful. But what you're actually protecting is a cage that you have become so familiar with that you cannot notice the bars that is stretching from the ceiling to the ground. Safety isn't freedom. And the more that you keep worshiping the comfort, the more invisible your life becomes. I am not saying this to provoke you, okay? I am saying it because I know exactly what it feels like to choose the same predictable routine day in and day out. Not because you love it, but because the uncertainty of the other side feels like a psychological freefall. And that kind of scares the hell out of you. Look, I am not a psychologist or a guru. I am Marisha, just a simple girl, and everything that I share comes from lived experiences, deep reflections, and the courage to question who I used to be. This is not a performance. This is rewiring. You want to know what you've trained yourself to do? You have trained yourself to measure your life not by desire, but by how little discomfort you can tolerate without panicking. You wake up and before your body even stretches, your mind is already negotiating with fear. Not consciously, you're not doing it on purpose, but subtly and silently, you are negotiating. What version of me do I need to perform today to feel the safest, to stay the safest? And you call that being normal. The uncomfortable truth is this: your comfort zone isn't peace. It is just predictable enough to feel quiet. And quiet feels like control. But deep inside, let's admit it, under all the routines, the sensible choices, under the perfectly reasonable excuses that you make, that you love to make, you can feel it, can't you? That rest, that subtle restlessness, that silent tension in your chest when you are imagining the life that actually scares you. And you don't call it longing. You call it being unrealistic. It's interesting, isn't it? How quickly you silence the version of yourself that makes your pulse change. Let's talk about something that you don't usually admit out loud. You don't stay where you are because it is right. It is the right thing. It is the right way to live. No. You stay because it is familiar. And familiarity feels safe, even if it's slowly suffocating. Because you have built a personality around being the stable, stagnant, stationary person. And you take pride in that consistency. To the point that you have started judging people who seem too reckless, too hungry, too disruptive, too ambitious. But what you're really doing is reinforcing a psychological contract that says, as long as I do not shake the structure, I won't have to face who I might become. But here's the quiet death that no one warns you about, okay? Not dramatic, not chaotic, just a soft, silent, rotting erosion. A slow shrinking of possibility. Every time that you choose the safe option over the honest option, your nervous system rewards you with relief, and your soul pays the price in silence. You have begun to mistaken the absence of anxiety for alignment. They are not the same. Think about this carefully, okay? When was the last time that you felt deeply alive and deeply uncomfortable at the same time? Not stressed, not overwhelmed, alive. Okay? alive. That sharp sensation of standing at the edge of something that could change your life, that could potentially change your life. You remember that feeling. I know you do. You just buried it under all that routine. And now, as you listen to me, your mind is trying to defend itself. You're thinking about bills, responsibility, other people who depend on you. You're trying to get defensive with me. But notice how quickly your fear is trying to disguise itself as logic. The comfort zone isn't a place. It's not just a place, it's an identity. And you have been loyal to it longer than you have been loyal to your own evolution. And here's the disturbing part. You don't just avoid the risk. You've emotionally bonded with the limitation. The limitation has become a part of you. You have become part of the limitation. You begin to associate safety with morality and staying small with being sensible and stability with virtue. You have started to believe that anyone who dares for too much or just dares too much is irresponsible. But quietly, painfully, a part of you envies their chaos. Because chaos at least means movement. And you, on the other hand, have mastered stillness so well that it almost feels like maturity. Almost. And then there's that voice that you hear at night, that you only hear at night, when no one is watching you, when your distractions have just ran off the face of the earth. And that voice whispers to you questions like, is this really it? Is this the full outline of who I'm allowed to be? Is this all there is to life? Is it? Is it really? And you swallow that voice. You override it with practicality. Well, let me tell you, that is not discipline. That is self-suppression refined into habit. Let's get real. You have been taught that freedom looks like comfort, peace, and certainty. So you have learned to chase environments that feel stable and to hang out with people who do not challenge you and make decisions that don't disturb the narrative that you have built. But here's the psychological fracture that no one prepares you for. The self that feels safest is rarely the self that feels most alive. You can be secure and spiritually dormant at the same time. And that contradiction becomes your baseline. You tell yourself, I'm fine. And mean it genuinely, in the most emotionally numb way possible. The question isn't whether your life is stable. The question is whether your identity still has life in it. Because let's be real, right now, comfort isn't protecting you. It is simply just preserving a version of you that no longer fits. And deep down, you know exactly where you're lying to yourself. You know what conversations you're avoiding, what decisions you're postponing, and what desires you have been intellectualizing away. That is not confusion. That is fear wrapped in irrational language. Not irrational, in rational language, sorry. That existential tension that you feel, it is not a problem. It is the moment that your current self and your possible self are in conflict. And instead of listening to that tension, you medicate it with normalcy. Schedules, excuses, distractions, safety. You are not exhausted because life is hard. You are exhausted because you are constantly suppressing the person that you could become. That internal pressure isn't stress, it's resistance. Resistance to the unknown version of you who doesn't fit into the carefully curated life that you have built. And now here's a snap. You don't actually fear the unknown. You fear the responsibility of becoming someone you can no longer blame the world for. Because as long as you stay comfortable, you get to keep your current story. You get to keep your current excuses and your current identity. Comfort gives you predictability, but it also keeps you innocent of your own power. And that might actually be the most unsettling truth about it all. Because one day, and this is inevitable, okay, you're going to realize that the life that you protected so carefully was the very thing that kept you from evolving. Not because you weren't capable, but because you chose emotional safety over the psychological freedom. And now, let me ask you something quietly. Not for your social media language, not for your curated self, just you. What part of your life feels safe to you, but also feels slightly dead? Tell me, where are you calling peace when it's actually really avoidance? Who would you be if you stop confusing comfort with truth? And most importantly, most disturbingly, how long are you going to keep negotiating with a version of yourself that exists purely to avoid discomfort and not to experience life? You don't actually have to answer me. Just sit with these questions. Think about it. Ponder on it. Because once you see that comfort can be the quiet form of self-abandonment, you can't unsee it. And the silence that follows, that is not emptiness. That is the moment that your old identity realizes that it might not survive the honesty that you are about to face. So I'll leave you with this. If safety isn't freedom, and comfort is slowly erasing you, tell me, whose life are you really trying to protect? And how much of yourself are you willing to lose just to keep feeling safe? If you are ready to stop negotiating with your potential, subscribe. You do not need more motivation. You need more mastery over your own mind. Seems I'm gonna have to edit again.